All right, guys, Sam here with you. November 14th. It's Wednesday, middle of the day. And, of course, we have had some pretty substantial breakdowns across crypto here. Now, next up, by request, right? We always poll our members on these days. Let them pick, and no surprise here, in addition to Bitcoin, the request is for an update on Ethereum. Now, I've got Ethereum to the dollar here. This is an 8-hour chart on Bitfinex, simply because that's where the volume is. Now, I've got a count on this that is, I think, a reasonable count. And we've gone over this many times here. But with regards to where we are now and where we may be going here. So with the larger count here, there's a pretty strong case for this 5-wave structure. So we get a leading diagonal. 4 overlaps the 1 pretty substantially. And, let's see, in this case here, so we would look for, and I've shown this before, the length of the, if we look for a measurement between the 2 and the 3, when we come to the 50, we get a little through target. Remember, in a diagonal, we're looking for something technical in the 4 as relates to the start of the 1 and the pivot. Here, let me take this off so you can see a little better. And the pivot of the 4. All right, so we're just a couple of ticks in front. That's the absolute just textbook. Again, I've shown this many times. Can't get any better than that. So we know the algorithms that's kicked in to sell here. Slight front run on the 50. It's almost always a front run. They go to target to the tick. All right, so we can be fairly confident about this being a completed. So we've got a 5-wave structure, motive wave. It's a leading diagonal of the A wave. Well, if we now can carry on here and just go, okay, well, I've got a 5-wave structure here. Get that dialed in. Here's my A wave. I'm looking for that B wave. Well, ideally, anywhere from the 50 to the 6, well, really from 50 to the 786, that whole range is potential area for a B wave, but we don't make it here. So you look and you go, wonder. Well, maybe I've got to work from another pivot. Remember, an algorithm doesn't care about the Elliott count. It's just working off of dominant swing. So here's certainly a dominant swing. We come down to that low. We've come right to the 50, and now we're approaching this target down here at 145. All right. So where are we sitting here now? We're at 1. Did we get a little snapback here? 183. All right. So that's been there for a very long time, and I've looked at this many times and said, well, you can't ignore it, right? It's been there the whole time. The software just sitting here, gonna wait, not gonna touch it, right? It's the temptation. There is no temptation to take profit. Right? They'll stay with it until they get that target. So that could be happening. That could be happening fairly soon here, based on what we're seeing here. We've just missed it here. Now that's a little. That's targets 1. What are we at? 142. We're at 80. That's a little. It's a little much for a front run here. So don't be surprised if there's more downside here to come down and tag that target. Now, sadly, unfortunately, or I guess it depends on what side of the market you're on. We don't have the same structural potential support here. We've broken through it. So we had some pivots here that may have offered some of that support that looked like they were hovering in that range, but we've got to break a little bit lower before we run into any untested support, right? And that would put us below our target down here at 145. It's just ugly, right? There's no way around it. It's just a very ugly looking chart. So we do have, what you can see here now, we have some market acceptance down here. So the market is acclimating to this. You can see all this volume. Let me tighten that up a bit. We can see all of this volume here. So this is visible range. So everything that I can see here, the most volume has taken place right here at 212. And now we're sitting here in the low one, or in the 180s. So pull that off here. At this point, I don't know that trying to dig the count out of here is necessarily particularly helpful. I mean, it's a little bit of you could probably make the case that we're in some sort of a 4 and the 5 is yet to come. We can do that. Let's look at it here. So if this is the 3 here, well, we've had a pretty substantial extension here in the 3rd, but of course we have to get that subdivision within the 3rd. So we can look here. Well, if that's correctly identified as the 2 and that's my 3 low, well, we're awfully shallow. We don't even make the 23 for the 4. Now I can go down. Well, let's go to a 3 hour, see if we can get a better look at that. This looks like the most likely candidate for the 2, given that's where we get at least a. We don't even make the 50 here. So it's the 38, right? So it's not that it's unheard of. It's just less probable. It's more common for that 2 to be up at the 50, but we've got to, again, on the assumption that I've got this correctly identified as our 1, and that's the 2. Well, we get the 38. All right, so let's pull this off here. Well, you can note here just, all right, it's ancient history here, but we go right to the target. So let's pull that off and say, well, would that make sense? If that's 1, 2, well, if this is the 2, how would the 3 relate to the length of that 1? Well, we can just grab here, we use our alternate tool and say, okay, well, if that is my 2, let's get it right on there. Well, we got a little reaction here at the 618. A little sloppy around the 100. We've gone to the 272. We know the high probability zone is down here. Note where we would be lining up with those prior resistance peaks. So are we done here? Is that the 4? You might maybe you make the case here that this is your 4, but even that still you don't have a deep retracement here. So maybe you've got a triangle here. So you might think, oh, okay, well, it looks like maybe that's the 4 there. We've got some sort of a little mini triangle that kicked in there, and we're going down here. Well, it looked like maybe you had a chance that you were finishing down here, although the length of the 5 relative to the 1. The symmetry is not great, so it could just be that all we're in the midst of is that this is the 1, 2. Let's open that up here so we can see it a little bit better so it makes sense. So potentially that's just the 1, 2 of our 5th. So if we're coming down from here, if that's 1, 2, well, this doesn't look terribly impulsive, at least not at this moment in time. Let's get that in a different color here, and we'll go to micro. All right, so maybe we're coming down here. So does that look like, even if I stretch this here, if this is 1, 2, let's think about where we'd be going. Well, it certainly doesn't look like we've got a classic third wave going, right? We can all agree on that. So then you think maybe it's A, B, C. Maybe now you can't have a triangle in the 2, so you kind of get yourself stuck here. If this is right, then that's the 1, 2. So you pull here. Come here. From 1 to 2, how do we look there? Well, right to the golden zone. All right, so I've got a strong contender for the 2. Problem is, what after that 2? This, but certainly not. Let's go down to a 1 hour. See if we can make any more sense of that. Certainly doesn't look like your traditional third wave here. It's very choppy here. If anything, it looks more like maybe you could make a case for a diagonal. So maybe we have an ending diagonal. So you might have an ABC here. So coming off of this, we get an ABC into a 1. There's the 2. We don't overlap here. So maybe you can make that case that within this diagonal, if that's 1, 2, well, we're not going to be long enough there. So here, let me pull this off. Again, I'm just trying to work through it and show you at least my thought process coming here. Well, could that be 1, 2? Well, let's think about it. All right, so could we be finishing here if that's a 2? Well, that's not enough for us to be our third, right? So if we think about the length of the 1 relative to the 2, well, we got a long way to go to get to 100%. So maybe you're putting the 3 down here. So maybe this is 1, 2. No, that doesn't work either, right? So you're just riddled with Elliott problems here. So, what do you do with that? So maybe this is 1, 2, 1, 2. That doesn't really work because you'd overlapped here. So it's just full of problems. So then you kind of look at it and you go, well, okay, is the Elliott helping me here? Well, so you got a couple of choices. Either the count's wrong, and this third is maybe here, right, and none of this plays, and that this would be more supportive to the idea that we've got, that would be just the 4 of the third, and some sort of a corrective something is going in here. Maybe you can make an AB truncated C. Even that's not pretty, so why not take the ABC there? We know it was technical relative to this swing. So 3, 4. So maybe you're trying to finish here with a 1, 2 of an ending diagonal, something along those lines. Well, this is going to have more to go. So if this is our 3, this seems to work better. If that's our 3, and starting here, if that 1 is in, well, we've gone to the 786, so that potentially could play. you know, so this you'd have to have this as AB just going in for the third. So on the assumption we've got a diagonal, that this would be some sort of an ABC going in. Now I'm not suggesting that that's our pivot because we're not far enough. So if this is the 1, 2, we know that the 3s, well, here this will be the 1, 6, 1, 8. This will be close to the 1. So let's pull this back here so we can take that off. So maybe 1, 2. Let's think about that. So if that's the 1 and that's the 2, well, we've got 100. So maybe you've got the third there. It ain't gorgeous, but at least it qualifies. So maybe you've got 1, 2, 3 in this ABC. This little spike down here, certainly impulsive. So maybe we've got a diagonal shaping up. Well, if we have a diagonal, if that third is in, right? I'm not quite ready to declare that low in. But if we start a decent retracement here, remember in a diagonal, we're looking for the swing relationship between the start of the 1 and the pivot of the 3. So if that's our pivot, we'd pull from this swing here to this low that we just made today. And we'd be looking for a reaction somewhere in here around the 50. It wouldn't be the craziest thing I've ever seen, but this move here, you know, it doesn't quite look like it's done. It looks like if anything, something yet is still to come here. So if we're going to retrace out of this, it looks like you might have one more push down here to give us a better looking 3. So maybe the C is heading down here for a little bit something more to fit the symmetry. So if we're going to go 1, 2, well, of course, we could use some median lines here to see if we get any benefit from the market structure. And of course, that's not going to be a pro. Okay, so there we go. So, well, okay, we went out of it pretty hard here. So then you got to make a judgment call. Is that a point where you'd say, maybe I got to redraw here? We could put the 2 on there and see if we catch that. Yeah, maybe 2, 2.5. Whoops, sorry, 1.5, maybe. You know, it's kind of an ugly count. So it suggests to me that we are not done going down here. That would be the most probable that I would suggest. If that's the 3, we're looking for the 4 here, and I don't like that as much because of the symmetry here. So if, for the sake of the discussion, if this becomes the 3, then this 4 looks. Oh, it pisses me off. Okay, so there we go. So if we come back here, if this low starts to, if we retrace here, and we're not that far off of that pivot here, so we don't know, this may still have much more to go here before we're making any sort of a retrace here to try and challenge that 4. So it's just too soon to make a call. So I think this is worth maintaining here, as these are the dominant swings that we're working with. Yeah, we've had this, but we know this swing here was technical. So just to kind of put the whole thing together here. So we got here, right? So let me pull this one off. All right, so here's our golden zone. So swing low, swing high, golden zone for the B. Well, that makes sense where we're to and through target. Maybe a little lower. Maybe we're coming to the median line down here. It just this does not look like it's done yet as it relates to these swings that we've had previously. So the fact that we're through the algo target, right? So ideally, you'd want to see something more precise there. So it looks to me like the next trade is a short, of course, right? Which suggests something along those lines. That would finish us with that third down here. Maybe we've got to go to, we've got modified shift on this. Maybe we have to, or pardon me, do I have original? No, I've got the wrong one. Let's get that. Where'd you come from? All right, let's get this hot again. Let's go to our shift. No, maybe we catch the low down here. Let's look at modified shift. You know, so let's pull this off so we can see the market here. So we're not quite there again. You know, that looks like if we're going to pivot down here, it looks a little premature for this 4 to be in up here. You know, you can kind of talk yourself into it because here, look at the point of control sitting right here. So we've got good market acceptance here. What is that level? 212, right? We looked at that as that was That was a prior technical pivot. So if we've gone, if we're going to finish with a diagonal, we've got 1, 2, and then we're just in the middle of putting in the C wave here. I think it's too early to be looking for that 4 off of this price action here. It looks like there's more downside here. I'd be anticipating, well, again, so just to draw it up and identify it. So if that's our 1, that's our 2. Even though we've gone past this 100, I'd be looking for something lower down here. Now in a diagonal, right, so you have less probability here. It's not as tied to the 1618, although that wouldn't be uncommon, but it's not as common as you'd look for it in an impulse here. So if we're in a diagonal, really you might be looking for more parity here between the length of what I'm proposing is the A wave, if that's the B wave here. Well, look at that, right? So we just came to 100 of that. So it's possible that's the 4. It just looks a little short to me. So what that's going to look like, let's just clear all this up here so we can make sense of it. So what would that diagonal look like? So we'd be saying this is the 1, this is the 2, that's the 3, and we're going to come in for the 4 and the 5. Well, again, it's possible. So you'd be looking at 3, 4, 5 down here to complete the C of a diagonal. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I can't say that I love it enough to where I'd want to be looking for that short there. And certainly down here at these levels, so you certainly could think of it this way. Well, if you're a long-term Ethereum bull, buying under $200, all right, if Ethereum's going to survive and be a dominant platform here, it's hard to imagine, well, shit, anything's possible. But if you're a long-term bullish on it, so buying Ethereum under $200, it's pretty tempting, right? So, but we look at these targets down here. Well, if you liked it at 200, you're going to love it at 145. So, right, just a question of, your own personal opinions about in perspective about where crypto's going eventually here. At some point we start pushing towards $100. You got to start wondering about, does Ethereum survive? Well, see, that's a bet that I'd be willing to make, that crypto's not going to just go to zero and evaporate. So, but all of that said, right, I digress a little bit. 1, 2, how technically can we approach this? Let's pull that off. So you don't have enough information here. Certainly I wouldn't be a buyer down here, but I don't. So it's kind of the way crypto's been for quite some time here, really since the end of the summer here. We're too low. It's too late to sell. It's probably too soon to be a buyer here. So you want to be pushing here from 180. What's your goal? 0? Right, yeah, sure. There's some scalps in here that can be done and some short-term swing trading here. I'm down on a 60-minute. I would tell you that it's going below that here, things get much less reliable. So again, defer back to what can you see? What can we be definitive about? What did the algos do last? Well, we know the algos sold here. We don't have to wonder about that, right? They defended here's the golden zone. They've already hit first target. Now they may well be long looking for second target down here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw if we're going to get a little retrace off of this, profit taking, whatever it may be. Well, here's going to be natural resistance. We might make something like that would come down. I would propose to you we'd just be finishing the third wave with that kind of action, and I'd be looking for the 4 up here. I'm not one to be a seller of crypto personally, but if we came back up here, at least I have a better idea of where we are in the count. Now we're coming down here to that 145, which was that long-term target when we pulled way when we were looking at the daily or the 8-hour chart. So now note here we've got our potential target down here at that 145 level. So if I pull this thing all the way back out, we put it all back together, and we look at this dominant swing here, swing low, swing high, right? 145 is that target. So if we come back down here, let's go back to the 1 hour, right? So look, we get this confluence down here. All right, here's our big dominant algo target right there. So that's kind of just the whole process of trying to put the whole thing together. Again, you got to respect that larger algo pull, that they're going to stay short until we get here. So trying to say, well, how does it get there? If it gets there, could that be our long-term low? Well, the symmetry certainly looks better here. If we're going to get something, if this is A, B, and we're going down into C. Now we could, of course, here, we could work another set of median lines here off of this pivot. All right, see how that potentially now could impact. Well, here we are sitting here just now. We've retraced back to this algo target. So if we're going to bounce off of this, well, first thing we got to deal with is the median line, right? That certainly will be potential resistance. This pivot here, so this whole area that was support, so this will become the resistance. So all of these pivots, so you could really draw it that way. All of that there is going to become resistance. Pull this off. We were just highlighting the point of control there. So this is going to have some work to get through, to get through these levels. Even if we were going to make it up to the upper parallel here, it still would look more to me like again, we don't have this, if we just use the pivot that's here. So there's our, let's take this back down to, we'll get rid of the 2 and the 1.5 just to clear it up. Okay, so there's potentially, now we get a pivot. This will be a challenge here, swing high to swing low. That 50, we know software will kick in there. Again, always. It doesn't mean it can't get through it. It just means to expect it, that selling pressure will kick in there. All right, we come back to this big area of market acceptance. Market's real comfy right there. What's our point of control? 209. So if we bounce back here, if we get through the median line, first challenge, and we come to this upper parallel, the upper parallel here at the 50, you know, if you're someone who's comfortable shorting crypto, then right there, that's your trade. Right? You want to let that complete. Well, you'll have another one here for the potential 4 if we pull from wherever this pivot is. That 4 will be a 50 to pay attention to. That's where we'd be looking for it, and then potentially one more push down here. If we get down here, no need to be a hero, right? As I would like to tell you, let the thing shape and get a higher low, at least the potential for a higher low, and then that's the trade that you're looking for. If you're entering here between the 50 and the 618, we know this pivot here is where that analysis is incorrect, right? The market's got more downside. So you can be a buyer here, and just there's no reason to try and nail the low. Why? It's just such high risk. There's just no reason to do it. You don't need to be the hero there. Let the market find a pivot. First, let's let this complete, right? Something is in the process of completing here, regardless of how we count this. But having worked through that on the possibility, oh, maybe it's here, maybe it's here, this looks like the best count. So we're 1, 2, hoping for a diagonal to finish this down here at that large target at 145. So don't be surprised if you're looking at your quote monitor and you see 145, and then you'll start looking for a reaction there. All right, so it's very ugly in crypto. I understand. All right, so a lot of malaise sits in. This is often what you'll find as we approach these kind of substantial bottoms here. I don't think we're at capitulation yet, right? There's still enough hope left here. We need to reach the point of hopelessness. That's when capitulation. You'll feel it. You'll know it when you see it. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I've got. Just a reminder that 3-day trial is running. You can find that link underneath this video here, and you can find it over on our Twitter feed. So it's 3 days for $7. Come in and give us a try. All right, guys, that's it for now.